He's the executive producer of The Odd Couple with Chris Broussard and our guy Rob Parker, and he also hosts and produces. I mean, he technically produces, but he's basically like Jason McIntyre's co-host on the Straight Fire Pod with Jason McIntyre. It's episode 33 of Blindside Sports. With me today, Robert Guerra, also known as Rob G, as most people know him, at the producer RG on Twitter. He definitely has some hot takes here and has a cool story. So, Rob, welcome to the show. What's up? How are you doing, man?
What's up, brother? The blind Seahawks fan in the flesh. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for coming on here. My name's Emmett Douglas. Get me on Twitter at EmmettNoC04. Now, I have to ask you before we hop into the Lakers or, the teams you know a lot about, what is your favorite Rob Parker drop in the system right now?
Oh my gosh, there's so many to choose from. You know what? The one that is my favorite only because it was not one where usually Rob kind of telegraphs when he's going to say something ridiculous. But we have one in the system where he says, Aaron Rodgers has some beautiful balls. And it's just one that we don't use very often because we like to save it for like special occasions. But that's the one that's my favorite.
Yeah, I like that one too. And, another one that I like is I'm a little moist right now.
Yeah.
And then the one that he just got like a month and a half ago when he was in New York, I have a glizzy in my mouth.
Oh yeah. Well, what's funny is
he didn't know what it meant.
No, he had no idea. He had no idea. He was in New York for like a week and people were making fun of him and all his glizzies and his Instagram photos, and he had no idea. But the one about I'm a little moist right now. My favorite of that one is actually the Jonas impersonation of Rob Parker.
Oh, I love Jonas
right now. Jonas is the best, man. I told him, I've been telling him for years, before he got the morning show. I said, look, man, whenever I become a program director and I'm running my own station, you're the franchise. I'm bringing you with me. It's like, let's do it. And then now he's a big morning show host. So I don't think it's going to be possible anymore. I think the price is too high.
Yeah, it's tough because I love that he's like promoted on Two Pros on a Cup of Joe, but having him and Rob Parker was just some of the best radio you could ever have for. Like when it would be like, oh, it's Jonas today, and the show would go off the rails in like 2 seconds.
So yeah, the odd couple side piece, man. He's awesome.
Yeah. Now, speaking of crazy and stuff like that, obviously Chris and Rob, they're the odd couple for a reason. They have crazy takes and they're way different. Has there ever been a time where one of the guys has such a bad take to you where you're just like have your hand on that mic, like try not to come on because it's their segment? What's the closest you've been in the worst take that you've had on the odd couple?
Oh man, you know what, I'll say this. And you can ask the guys too. I've told them, I've told Chris, I've told Rob, I've told Alex, anybody who's worked on the show. I honestly do not care what their takes are. Like it does not, whatever they believe, because I know that they actually believe what they're saying.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why for me to say you're wrong or it's a terrible take. Like who am I to say that's not my opinion? That's their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's many that I disagree with a lot, but I've always said, I don't care what your take is as long as you can defend it.
Yeah.
So if Rob's going to say that, 10 other quarterbacks could have won that Super Bowl that Matthew Stafford won, then you better have 10 other quarterbacks that you can list and make a case for it. Mm-hmm. Or, if Chris is going to say something, defending LeBron, because I know he's the big LeBron guy. And even though I've been going back and forth on that for a while, but whatever you say, you better be able to defend it. That's pretty much my whole thing. And so the only times I ever get frustrated is if one of them has a take and, because in the heat of the argument, some things get brought up that you didn't think about when you came up with the take. And if you can't really defend it at that point, that's the only time I get frustrated. But as far as what their takes are, they can say whatever they want.
Yeah. It's funny too, a couple weeks ago when I have no idea if this was a bit or not, or what happened with this, but it was, I don't remember what it was about, but it was Aaron Rodgers got brought up and Rob Parker rage quit right before the break. He's like, Chris like, Rob, the Zoom meeting, Rob J. What happened?
Yeah.
And then he was in.
Yeah.
I think that, and it's not even the part that he rage quit for me. The best part is he's back to normal, right? When like the colors come on, or you have a guest. He's just like, oh, you're on the Odd Couple. What's up? I'm like, you just like said Chris Broussard's nothing like 5 minutes ago. And now you're back in here. Now, enough Odd Couple talk for now. That might come up later. Now, what the Lakers have been in a struggle. And I said it on the show. There's so many callers, I doubt you remember this, but I said there will be chemistry issues with Westbrook. And for you, I think it's a mix. There's a lot of people to blame on this Lakers team. But for you, who do you think are the people to blame? Is it LeBron, Westbrook, Pelinka, Vogel? Because I know Bo Benson, our guy, producer, he is ripping Vogel to pieces on Twitter.
I hope Bo hears this podcast, because I've been trying to get on his Swing Shift podcast for like 3 years.
You know what's funny?
And he keeps telling me no, because he knows I don't like baseball. But I was like, I got a hot take. Don't just let me get on. He never lets me on.
So you know what's funny about Bo Benson, and even you? I had VJ on a while, like 5 days ago, and we were talking about Laker apologists. And then I was talking about the mood of Lakers fans on Twitter, and I called out you and Bo like 3 times. I'll be real. So Bo might be a little mad if he saw it. So
all right, I'll let him know. I'll make sure he seeks it out.
I'll send it to him.
Okay. As far as the Lakers, I'm one of the few who doesn't really blame Westbrook that much. Just because he is who he's always been. Like he
got put in that situation too.
Yeah, exactly. He's been doing what he's done this season pretty much his whole career. So if you got him expecting something different, then that's your fault. Like he is who he is. There's a lot of blame to go around. The person, if I had to rank them in order, the person at the top to me would be LeBron, because he is the one who pulls the strings. He's the one who every move that they make is ran by him. Not saying he has final say, but he has a lot of input. I've talked to, it's been well reported by now, but I've talked to people before where the Buddy Hield deal was done, and LeBron came in and decided, no, we need another star to take the load off of me, because I don't want to be, being used as much as I have been. I'm getting kind of old. So he wanted Westbrook. And then the problem with LeBron is that when things are going great or going well, he's fantastic. He's gregarious. He's locked in defensively. He's very focused.
He's kind of like a sore loser. That's kind of what.
And when things go wrong, like his body language, especially in LA, I didn't watch every game in Cleveland, but in that, like he just will just check out.
That Clippers game, man, holy crap.
Yeah, like he does it. It's so easy for him, because and the problem is that unless you watch every single Laker game, or unless you're like a diehard Laker fan who's tuned into every game, like on the national level, it's impossible. You can't watch every game. You can't listen to every game. It's just, there's too much to go on. You got to follow Kevin Durant. You got to follow Giannis. You got to follow Steph. So it's not possible. Now. Yeah. Exactly. John Morant. You can't actually follow every game. But if you're following like the way Laker fans do, like you can observe it pretty easily that even though he's getting these stats, because he just collects stats like nobody's business, he's not impactful. He's not doing anything that's making you feel like he has his fingerprints on the game. It's just, oh, LeBron scored again, and then he gave up a 3, and then he got a rebound, and he scored again, but then he got screened away, and then a guy scores right behind him. And it's like he's not locked in the way he needs to be. And if you're the best player, and if you're the leader of the team, which he is,
especially without AD too.
Exactly. Like he gets all the credit when things go well, and that's fine. But you also got to accept responsibility when things don't go well. And I don't think he's done a good job of that this season.
Yeah, I'm with you too. And I do think it is LeBron. And I will say this, I said this on other shows, and do I think the Lakers should try and, figure something out? Okay, maybe. But there's a difference between should and are gonna. The Lakers, right. I'm not buying into that, people saying that the Lakers are going to trade LeBron James this season. I don't think that's happening in the offseason. If anything, he's gonna not sign his extension, and then in 2023 in that offseason, he's gonna go to a team that will get Bronny so he can play with Bronny. That's what's gonna happen. Because
Right.
you said it. When LeBron James wants something, he wants something, and it's hard to put his mind to anything else. He doesn't accept that. And about Westbrook too is I said this on the show. I said this on my show, Twitter. I said that you need another shooter behind LeBron and AD. Westbrook, what Westbrook does sometimes is impressive, but he can't shoot. You could go
Right.
after, I'm a Blazers guy, and I would have been McCollum. That could have been interesting. Buddy Hield would have been great. There's so many other Bradley Beal, but now he's happy apparently, which is interesting.
It's all right. We're gonna get your guy Dame Lillard. It's okay.
Yeah, I know me and you on Twitter would go back and forth on this, but now after the what's that guy? I'm blanking on his name. The trade from like 3 weeks ago that was horrible.
When they trade, well, they did the McCollum trade, and they got
before McCollum,
the Covington, Norman Powell trade.
That guy. Yeah, I feel I'm starting to lose hope for them, man. I'm very slowly. I'm starting to be that guy that thinks either they're my two things are okay. We're just building around Damian, or Damian's just gonna be like, I've had enough. But you said it on Straight Fire. Is Damian is a loyal guy, and that's bad for him. So like, I wouldn't be shocked if he did stay for a long time. And that one press conference he did a while ago, way before the CJ trade, he seemed like he loved Portland. But about the Westbrook trade, Rob, I just think he kind of was set up to be put in this bad position, like get put up with LeBron. And I think Westbrook, man, that guy just bounces around. If anything, I won't be shocked if he was like, I've had enough of this. Get me out of LA at the offseason, because LeBron and AD are going to be there for at least another year. AD probably longer. And the thing is too, with the Westbrook trade and the LeBron and the AD, all that is they have so much money locked into those three guys. It's going to be hard to find someone else. Like, you can get like these, guys who are all right at shooting, but you're not going to be able to get like a decent player like a Buddy Hield or like a
right. Well,
like they got so desperate they signed DJ Augustine.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing that they have working in their favor this summer that they didn't have at the trade deadline, which is why I think it was smart they didn't trade him at the trade deadline, because you weren't going to get anything of value. You would have had to attach a pick just to get John Wall. Who's to say John Wall would even be an upgrade?
People are like, Lakers would be winning with John Wall. I'm not buying that, man.
No. But he is an expiring contract. So if there is a team that is, apprehensive towards going into the luxury tax, or they have a lot of long-term salaries that maybe don't line up with the rest of their roster, then you can find yourself making it. I'm not saying this would happen, but like hypothetically, Indiana has always been unwilling to. They try to avoid paying the luxury tax as much as possible. They have their backcourt of the future now with Halliburton and Chris Duarte. So they don't really need Brogdon, Hield, who like those two guys specifically. Yeah. So if they and they're both locked up for like 3 or 4 more years, each of them. So if they wanted to, they could say, hey, we'll take Westbrook's expiring contract. We'll take 2 unprotected first-round picks. And you take these contracts off our hands. And then I'm not saying Westbrook would actually play for them, but they would just have his expiring contract, which they could then send to somebody else. Or like the Knicks. The Knicks are always star hunting. They could use a $47 million expiring contract so that in the following year, they can go after somebody else or whatever.
I actually think Russ in New York wouldn't be that bad, because like you have like other guys around, like RJ and like you people in Obi Toppins, Julius Randle. Like I think Russ in New York would, if we're talking about where he would play besides the Lakers, that would be an interesting fit, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I know that there's this narrative because social media especially will kill Russell Westbrook. But he's not a terrible player is the problem. He just can't shoot. But like and I think was it Reggie Miller on the Clippers game broadcast that he says, look, Westbrook's averaging like 19, 8, and 8. Yep. Or something like that. And obviously he's not a good shooter, but there's a lot of guys who in their dreams could not get you 19, 8, and 8.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, And it's like he's a terrible fit with LeBron. He's a terrible fit on this roster because of, THT needs the ball, AD needs the ball, LeBron needs the ball. He's not a good fit with the Lakers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he can't help an also-ran team like he did in Washington get to the playoffs. Because if he's your focal point and you surround him with shooters and defenders, you can win with that formula. It's like a junior varsity version of what LeBron can do. So, I think that there could be a situation this offseason where maybe whoever the Lakers trade him to doesn't keep him, and then they trade him to somebody else or they buy him out. And then you see him getting back to the Westbrook of old, where he's putting up his numbers. He's not elite, but at least it's a better situation than what he's got with the Lakers.
Yeah, and you bring up Washington last season, and that's I think the craziest part about this whole situation too is Russ was going crazy last season, and now he's still like 19-8-8 is good, but he's just been drowned out with all this LeBron talk and how bad the Lakers are. Now, enough Lakers, Rob G. Rob Guerra at the producer RG joining us. That's his Twitter handle, by the way. A big NBA guy. So I got to ask you.
Good reset, by the way. As a producer, I noticed that reset you did. That was good.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. I have to ask you though, because I say this all the time when either Chris or Rob is out. You could host the Odd Couple and hold your own and be up to the guy's level. So you know your stuff. And NBA and NFL wise. I'm gonna ask you a question about NFL. I couldn't get to in my last show, but NBA. Who do you think is coming out of the East and West this season? It is, to me, there's a couple teams I wouldn't be shocked, but who do you have?
Well, the problem is the injuries. Before the Chris Paul injury, I thought Phoenix was the best team by far.
Yep.
And it's not just that they were good, it's that they were locked in a way that, you don't see very often. And the team I compared them to was the 2009 Lakers when they beat the Magic in the finals. When they got blasted by Boston in the championship round the year before, they came back the next season and you could tell that they had a different level of focus than they had the year before. Like they had a one-track mind. It's similar to happened with the Spurs when they lost to the Heat and they came back the next year and smacked them in the finals. And so I saw a lot of that in Phoenix, the way they were playing, the way they didn't take possessions off, the way that they had a certain level of intensity throughout each game that they played. And that's why they had those crazy win streaks. But Chris Paul is so important to everything that they do. He's not their best player, but he might be the most important player. And if he is not healthy, then that changes everything. I'm assuming, though, that when we get to the playoffs, he'll be back. And even if
they said 6 to 8 weeks.
Right. So that would be right around when the playoffs start or the first round. So I'm assuming whoever they get in the first round, even if Chris Paul's 100%, they'll be able to win. And assuming he's healthy, I think that I like Phoenix. In the East, that's tough. I think I would lean right now with Milwaukee or Chicago.
Yeah, man. How about DeMar DeRozan's been going on a tear as of late. Like, no one expected DeMar DeRozan to be putting up what he's been doing out here in Chicago when he went to Chicago in the summer. It's cool to see that Bulls team is finally getting some success.
Yeah, and the thing is that they're not healthy either, and they're still treading water. And I think that's the mark of a really good team is when you don't have your pieces, when you don't have your best available. Can you still win games? Can you still survive? And they're able to do that. And the thing is that what we saw during this stretch, with Caruso out, Alonzo out, and Levine was out for a long period of time, is that DeRozan was capable of carrying the load. And so I think that's only going to make them sharper when they get to the playoffs. Because, with Brooklyn on talent, they should be good. But the problem is we don't know when Ben Simmons is going to play. We don't know
that's the whole thing.
Yeah, we don't know if the vaccine mandate is going to be lifted in time for Kyrie to be a full-time player, so we can't count on them. And with Philly, I know everyone's very excited about them because they looked in the last 3 games. The problem, and I said this on the Straight Fire podcast, is in order for Harden and Embiid in a playoff setting, because the playoffs are totally different than the regular season. Like it's almost a different sport. Is they both need the ball in certain areas of the floor to be their best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And the problem is with James Harden, I know he's looking great now, is he hasn't shown throughout his
Playoff
career.
Harden.
Yeah, well, playoff Harden is a struggle in itself.
Yeah.
But he hasn't shown during his career so far in like 10 plus years, when he does not have the ball, what is he doing? Because he likes to float around like 3-4 feet past the 3-point line. He doesn't cut. He doesn't screen. He doesn't do anything away from the ball. So in the playoffs, when everything's slowed down, you might run a Embiid Harden pick and roll, but Embiid's not a high flyer to get the ball and dunk the way like Capella was in Houston, or even like a Nick Claxton was in Brooklyn. Like, he would rather pick and pop or get it on the short roll and then go into the post. And when you get into the playoffs and teams can scheme against you and take away certain things, how are you going to adjust? It's going to be a lot of your turn, my turn, and they're both great players. But the problem is in order for them to get to where they want to go, they both have to be great at the same time. And I just don't know if they can do it right now as constructed.
Yeah. And I honestly, I hear what you're saying. And I think the trade could work out for the Sixers where they advance far, but there has to be a lot of levels. And, who knows what Tyrese Maxey is going to do in the playoffs, who's important in that Sixers.
Oh, he's been awesome. He's been awesome for them.
Yeah. And playoff Harden is very, he's a completely different Harden in the playoffs sometimes. And obviously you said it, in the playoffs, you can't have that. You need Harden, Embiid, and even Maxey to be on their A game. And I would say we could have I won't be shocked, Rob, if we had a repeat of finals of the Bucks and the Suns. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened.
If I had to bet money on it, that's what I would bet on. Would be Milwaukee and Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't, and if the Sixers can go, man, that would be awesome. But out of the West, I think it's the Suns who are going to make it. Warriors could, but they've been collapsing as of late.
Well, the Draymond thing is the biggest issue, because
they need Draymond.
Yeah, he's super important to what they do, and the thing with back injuries is it's not like an ankle or a wrist or a shoulder where it's like you can kind of gut through it. You'll be hobbled.
It's over time. Yeah.
It's like a back affects everything. Like, and they need him to be at his best for them to be, a good team. Like, you've seen with him out, they're not even a good team. They're like a mediocre team without it. So he's very important.
Yeah, I agree there. Draymond's important. Something cool with the Warriors, Rob, too, is they always, for scoring, I mean, Draymond Green's like that defense and that they're kind of ball mover guy. But for scoring, they always find a guy. Like February, Jonathan Kuminga had a good month. I believe he was averaging 15 in February. Now you got like Curry averaging 25, Poole 16, Thompson 17, Wiggins 17. Like they have that offense. It's just you need Draymond Green to facilitate and play his lockdown Draymond Green defense.
Exactly.
Now, why don't we shift over to the NFL? This is Blindside Sports. Rob G, also known as Rob Guerra, if you're technical, is joining us at the producer RG on Twitter. Now, I have no idea if you know the answer to this question, but I'm curious because this is a hard one. But obviously, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady have parted ways. Tom Brady retired. Who do you think will be at quarterback next year, week 1 for the Buccaneers? You're the hot take guy, so you're the perfect guy to ask.
It's not Tom Brady, that's for sure.
Wow, dude! Imagine if Tom Brady came back, how mad Rob Parker would be. He's not gonna, but just for like Rob Parker and the Odd Couple, Tom Brady would. That Rob Parker would probably have a stroke out of angry, but yeah.
You know what's funny is I hate Tom Brady almost as much as Rob Parker does, but the thing is I'm not on the air every day, so you don't know about it. Like I'm a Raider fan.
I know you hate Brady, and I hate him too.
Then, I hate Tom
but
Brady.
I can admit he's good.
Yeah, I can admit he's good too. I can also point out that
there are some such things that happened during his career.
Yeah, he gets a lot of credit in situations where he doesn't necessarily deserve it, and that's what frustrates me is because he's done so much good in his career and had so many big moments and clutch moments that you don't need to go out of your way to like make up things to like, oh yeah, look at the way he beat Aaron Rodgers in the championship game 2 years ago. It's like, hey, he threw 3 picks in the second half. He sucked. Like, but because his team won, it's like, oh, Tom Brady leave the Bucks. And it's like, no, he didn't. The defense led the Bucks.
There's been a couple Super Bowls that come to my mind that the 2018 one, the Patriots versus the Rams. If they had a different opponent, he wasn't very good, and they easily could have lost that game. The Seahawks Patriots Super Bowl, they should have lost that. The Falcons Super Bowl, the Falcons collapse, and that's Tom Brady. I'll give him that. He can come when he comes back and he gets on a tear. It's scary, man. But there's been so many like close calls in his career to where I think if he lost one or two more Super Bowls, or even especially if he lost that Falcon Super Bowl as bad as if it was actually that bad, I wonder if his legacy would be different, man. Like I really, you have to wonder. Like he's great, but there'd be a lot more pushback of, is Tom Brady the GOAT?
Well, he'd probably get a lot of LeBron James treatment.
Yep.
Where it's like, you made it to 10 Super Bowls, but you only won 4.
You know what Rob Parker would say?
Yeah, call him the low.
He's the low, Chris.
Going back to your question, I think it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be like Jimmy Garoppolo in Tampa.
Yeah,
I think that I don't think Kyle Trask is ready. I don't think that they're going to be in a position to draft anybody who's going to be that great. And, what we had thought coming into this offseason was it's going to be this crazy carousel of quarterbacks, all changing teams with Rodgers and Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson and Derek Carr, whoever. And it's looking more and more likely that most of them are going to stay.
Yeah.
And I think
can I point something out with the quarterbacks,
sure.
Rob, before you? Now, this has happened the past couple seasons in a row, and a lot of it too is the media. Just we jump on any little story that we can get our hands on for good radio or good podcasting or good tweeting on Twitter. And a lot of these are. In last year we were all suckers, but this year I didn't really expect too many of them to be gone. I was like, okay, a lot of these were overreactions last year. And a lot in the weirdest part about all of this, Rob, is a lot of these quarterbacks like a Russell Wilson, you mentioned him, are giving some of the weirdest vibes.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, I had a whole rant on him with VJ. I'll post a clip after the show. Russell Wilson, he's one of the hardest guys to read in the NFL. Because there's so much hints that he's like, okay, this guy's fed up. But then he's like, we're fine for now. It's like, dude, come on, just say you don't like the Seahawks. Like, it's okay. I've been prepared for this.
You rather, I'll say this even now as a Laker fan with LeBron James, you'd rather them just be honest and say what they think or what they don't think versus like passive aggressive, veiled shots, scrubbing my Twitter account, scrubbing my Instagram. It's just like, dude, if you want out, just say you want out. You've earned enough goodwill in the city. You won a Super Bowl. I don't think you're going to get killed and be the bad guy if you decide, hey, it's not working for me anymore.
Yeah. And the weirdest part about Russell's thing, too, is he did have like the Seahawks in his bio. But during the show with VJ, I was on Twitter and I was like, I'm going to search his tweet. So I just typed in the word Seahawks. Nothing really recent, but he didn't go as far back as like 2019 and 20 and stuff like that. Like there's still some old tweets, but all the newer stuff is just it's nowhere to be found.
Right. Yeah. Mr. Unlimited is focused on other things right now.
Yeah. As our guy Ty Shirt would play the Mr. Unlimited.
Unlimited.
God. Yeah. But I do think it's going to be Jimmy G at quarterback. And I think you were on vacation or working Dan Patrick when this story broke, but they were like, Rob and Chris were like, Trey Lance is not ready. And I'm like, look, if the Trey Lance doesn't need to be all, like, the difference is like with a lot of teams is that Niners team is so well set up with that defense, with Deebo Samuel, with George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Elijah Mitchell when he's healthy. Like that team is stacked. And it's just like, how do you, he may not look ready, but you got to give him a shot. When you've traded up 9 picks, Rob G, you trade up 9 picks, moved your assets for a guy, a quarterback especially, and you're not trying to play him. I just can't buy it. Like I think Jimmy G probably would go to Tampa Bay. And now there's also rumors too that the Niners don't like the offers they're getting for Jimmy G. So it's definitely gonna be interesting. But I do think in a couple months, when the Bucs realize, hey, we can't get anyone else. Like Carson Wentz on the Bucs would be horrible. we can't get anybody else, we might be willing to throw a first or a second for Jimmy G, because the Bucks, like, they are kind of, they're losing a couple guys, but they're still a pretty solid team. And Jimmy G, I mean, he can take a team to the playoffs, but my criticism on Jimmy G is in the playoffs, he's lucky to win the Cowboys game. And if Aaron Rodgers played any better and they didn't have that special teams collapse against the Packers, there
Right.
could have been different results. And I know it's a bunch of what ifs, but you just have to point it out. Jimmy G got kind of lucky this season in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, when you get to the postseason, in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, it's going to be, can your quarterback outdo my quarterback? Because there's not a lot of times where you get a Niners defense, like, was it 2 or 3 years ago, where you have to throw it 8 times because we can run it down your throat. Like, that's not usually what happens. There's going to be moments, there's going to be quarters, there's going to be halves where their guy goes on a run and he puts up 10 points quickly, or he goes 6 for 6 on a drive with a touchdown. Can you match it? And the thing with Jimmy G is that he hasn't really shown that he's capable of doing that, on a consistent basis. He can do flashes every once in a while, but in most cases, they win because he's along for the ride, not because he did something or was the reason that they ended up winning. And that's what you saw even against the Rams, because the Rams weren't playing good most of that game in the championship. And Stafford got hot there in the fourth quarter, and Jimmy G could not do anything to counter to go back at it. So, that's what happens.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one completely. Like, Jimmy G, just he's like I said earlier, he's just lucky to even make it to the NFC Championship. Like, not Aaron Rodgers, but especially that Packers collapse with the help of Aaron Rodgers. Like, he could have had a better game, was just the reason they lost. Now, a couple more questions here, Rob. Rob G joining us at the producer RG on Twitter. Now, if you guys don't listen to the Odd Couple, the engineer, the resident DJ, the resident vegan at Fox Sports Radio, Alex Teichert, you may think this guy works in sports. He likes sports, but he doesn't. And
he does not.
I have to ask you now, behind the scenes, obviously he's not gonna come the air with a hot take. Has Alex ever had a hot take on something sports related that you're like, even though he doesn't like it, he just heard so much from the guys, his brain kind of came up with something. You're like, wow.
Well, you know what? Yes, because Alex does not like sports. That's not a secret. But if he were to like a team, I guess technically he likes the Steelers.
Yeah, that's what he told me on Twitter.
Yeah, not so much that he knows like what their schedule is or how they play and blah blah blah, but he knows like the players' names. Like, he knew Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Big Ben. Like, he knew the killer bees. He's like, he didn't know when they played.
Isn't his mom a Patriots fan too, or something?
She's a Tom
like
Brady's fan. She's a Tom Brady fan.
Oh, yeah.
He says she's a bigger sports fan than he is. So like he'll be like, oh, I don't know who the Steelers are playing, but Big Ben's gonna get it done. Like, that's the kind of fan he is, quote unquote, right? So we do before every season, we do our Fox Sports Radio, we have a little sheet, and we all write down, who was gonna win each conference, Super Bowl, MVP, who's gonna be the worst team, blah blah blah. And Alex, because he doesn't really know a lot of teams, doesn't really know a lot of players, he wrote the Steelers were going to win a championship, the Super Bowl, and that Big Ben was going to win MVP.
God, if that one came true, if that hot take ever came into, man, that would be the craziest. Like, that'll be like Rob G level, like stuff you tweet on Twitter and then it comes true like later. Like, that would be insane.
Yeah, and so he's done that, I think, each of the last 2 years. So
he was close. He was close last year.
Yeah, when they were like 7-1 and 9-1, he's like, "See, I told you." It's like, what the heck? Your team's terrible. They're just sneaking by.
And I bet that this is a time where Rob Parker had that take when they were like 11-0 or whatever. He's like, the Steelers are the worst 11-0 team in NFL history, Chris Broussard. I bet Alex was like, no. But
he's like, look at the record. Look at the record. He doesn't watch the games.
Look at Big Ben's stats, man. Look at him.
Yeah, exactly.
I just have to know. Like, I don't know if you can answer this, and if I get Alex on one of these days, what does he do? Like, all the studios, like, you guys have sports. Like, is he on like TikTok the whole time? Like, how's he not watch the TVs and absorb something? Like,
well, the thing is, the way our studio is set up, he sits in front of me, but we're both facing the same direction. And right above his head, there's 4 TVs that are in the studio. And then right in front of him, there's another TV right at his eye level. So unless he leans all the way back and looks up, he's not watching the TVs that have all the games on. The TV that's right in front of him, he'll sometimes watch, but not really. And usually, because no one else can see that TV, it might not be on a sporting event. It'll be like on a movie channel or like the news or something like that. But recently, and he talks about it on the air all the time. You follow him on social media. His Weeb Nation,
Alex_T-shirt, by the way.
Yeah, his Weeb Nation podcast is really taking off. So he's not like focused on the show or on our show, like making sure all the audio sounds good and putting the drops in at the right time. He's creating content for his podcast and TikTok and Instagram live videos and things like that. Well, not live, but Instagram videos.
Yep.
And so he's really focused on that. Like, during commercial breaks, we'll have little conference calls with his partner and they'll go over things. And it's become like a little mini monster that they built over there out of nothing. And so, we joke around that he doesn't know anything about sports, but he knows a shit ton about anime and whatever else is going on in that. So, I would not be surprised if in like a year or two, Alex is one of those names that people in the anime world look to. Like, he really knows what he's talking about.
I think the best part about Alex and his not liking sports is that Colin Cowherd calls him all the time to fill in, and doesn't go on the early FS1 programs too and run that too.
Yeah, because he's good at what he does. Like the thing that people don't realize is that in that position, especially because his focus is, even though we're in a sports thing, his focus is on audio engineering. So to make sure everything sounds good, make sure we have the right air clips, make sure we have the right drops and stuff like that. And you don't really got to like sports to be able to know that. You just have to have an ear for what makes sense. And that's what he does.
Yeah. And that's, I was going to say that too. That's what I was going to say when you were saying it. But Alex, a lot of the reason he's so, the odd couple so blessed with their drops is because Alex, he's not focused on that Lakers game above him. He's just trying to, he's doing his Weeb Nation stuff, and in the background he hears Rob say, "I have a glizzy in my mouth," so he's like, "Oh, save that, save that." Oh, and there's a lot of them, like Jason Smith too, like Jason and Mike, the guys on after Chris and Rob. They have a lot of them. They're not as crazy as Rob. I mean, there's one that's Jason saying, "I'm doing it with Brian Fenley" and stuff like that. Right, and there's Mike saying "hobo," but it's not but he's so good at picking out things that just sound a little wrong and making them into something. The hey montage of Brian Fenley, the hey. And there's a bunch of different heys in there too. When I don't know if you ever listened to Smith and Harmon, or if you ever still in the studio for that, or but when they'll go to Brian Fenley, you'll hear 9 different heys. And I asked Brian, I'm like, was that T-shirt or was that you? And he's like, mostly T-shirt, because they all sounded different, right? Some of them were T-shirt, obviously, but 90% of them were T-shirt, and he's so good at mixing up, in making the show T-shirt. Yeah, he doesn't know a thing about sports, but he makes the show just so entertaining.
Yeah, and that's a skill that a lot of people, not a lot, well, that's a skill that many in sports media don't have, because they get into it because they love sports. They just want to talk about sports and watch sports. So they might be so consumed by the sports aspect and the debate aspect that they don't pick up on the cues where it's like, oh, this would be a good time to play this drop, or to play everything's not funny here, or whatever. Because Alex doesn't listen to it from a sport perspective. He listens to it from an entertainment perspective. Yeah.
I think that's why it works so well on the Odd Couple, Rob G. That is Rob Guerra, Rob G at the producer RG on Twitter, man. Thank you so much for coming on. It was fun.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. And good stuff. I love the way that you're resetting. I love the introduction, the outro. As a producer, let me tell you, you got it down pat. So good stuff, man.
Hey, that's because of you guys over on the network, though. You, Rob Parker, Chris Broussard, Ben Maller.
Oh, Ben's the best.
I love Ben Jonas. All those guys over there. Shout out to them, because I don't think, just behind the scenes stuff, talking about, you said, the outros, to any normal guy, that's okay, whatever, an outro, haha, cool. But for, if you want to be in radio and podcasting, you have to have the good the skills with that stuff. So Rob, it was super fun, man.
Right on, brother. Thanks for having me.